What up, what up? Welcome on into Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. On today's show, we revisit Baylor women's basketball Sweet 16 game versus USC, give our final four picks on the women's side, and take a look at the offseason for Baylor women's basketball. All that and more coming up on the show. Don't forget, you can catch Inside Baylor Sports every weekday. You can also watch the video version for free over at BaylorPlus.com and on the Baylor Athletics YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, rate, and review the pod. And follow Baylor Plus today on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. It's the official content network of Baylor Athletics. Think Netflix for your Baylor Bears. Download the app on your mobile device and sign up for your free 7-day trial today at BaylorPlus.com. It's Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. Justin Huff alongside 2019 national champion Caitlin Bickle. And Caitlin, you were up there in Portland, and you were cheering loudly, so loud, you've hurt your voice some, right?
Yeah, it's not as bad today. I couldn't talk yesterday, but I was definitely cheering on our girls and then definitely yelling at the refs some. Always got to yell at the refs some, but it was a great time. I had a joyful time.
Especially in that fourth quarter, I'm sure you yelled at them. A lot of calls going USC's way. But, hey, devoted fan, you should not have a voice. And so I love every bit of it that you don't have a voice. So let's jump into this game. Obviously, we know the Final Four now. We'll get to that in a second. But USC, Baylor came down to really almost one possession there at the end. A tough call that went against Baylor. And then, Bella hustling and a foul call there late. She goes to the line, Juju, a couple of free throws. Sarah Andrews makes the nice three, a little bank shot, and more free throws coming from USC. And so USC wins this one by 4. What was your biggest takeaways on this game, and what did you think of it watching it in person?
I mean, I really love the energy, first and foremost. Obviously, USC is a great team. I mean, they have a ton of talent, a ton of transfers. So it honestly could have gone either way. And I kind of told you I worried about their size some. I didn't think we let their 4 or 5 player affect us too much, which was great. I think kind of the one takeaway I had, obviously, I think we played lights out in the third quarter. And I think if we had, played that way for at least one more quarter, shot that way, I think we could have, blown out USC, honestly. I think kind of the one takeaway, and I'm saying this now because I got to watch USC play UConn on Monday. But it's a factor of almost making those higher scoring players inefficient. I think that was kind of our one downfall in the loss, because you obviously see in the UConn USC game, Kenzie Forbes and Juju both scored 20-plus points. Those two are always going to get their points. Top scorers are always going to get those points. It's just how many shots are they taking to get it? And I think that kind of needs to be at the forefront almost in games like these, like make everyone else beat you type of thing. So I think, I loved our energy. I loved our spirit. I loved when we got down in the second quarter, we fought back. And I thought we played fantastic. We looked amazing in the third quarter. But I think that was just kind of a key takeaway that I saw.
And, of course, if you look at, you can check the tape back. Jerry took USC. I took UConn. And so, Jerry, sorry. He'll be on Friday's show, so we'll revisit. I'll make sure I give it to him then. But I thought that, this one difference. So UConn, their players have made the Final Four before. You think about Paige and Aaliyah. Those players, they've been in the Final Four, and they've been key contributors. We haven't had that yet. Keyword is yet. I think that's coming next year. And a great spot where the Final Four is at next year, by the way. Tampa. Back to Tampa. Home of the 2019 national champions. That's where we won that one. So that would be a pretty full circle if we're able to do that next year. But, yeah, I just think that UConn had a little bit more experience at some key spots than us. And I thought that would be the difference against USC. Plus, they got Gino Auriemma in terms of going head-to-head with USC's coach, Lindsey Gottlieb. Lindsey's really good, but just Gino's Gino. And so, he's just got all that experience. So I think that really helped him as well. I thought Nikki did a great job coaching against Lindsey. And I thought, gave us the upper hand there, but just a little bit more. And USC's got a lot of talent, as you said, but a lot of older players. I mean, a lot of their transfers are in their 5th year because of the Ivy League, and the fact they didn't play at all during the 2021 season. So I think a lot of really good things to take away, though. Sweet 16. I mean, you go back, they had 7 top 25 wins. Non-conference, had one of the best starts in over a decade. So a lot of great takeaways. I feel like this year was a building block year for Baylor women's basketball. Stayed top 25 the whole year, all the way up to 4. And at one point in the rankings, had those big wins over Utah and Texas back early in the season. So I just think there's so much this team can take into the offseason. And also the fact that 4 of the 5 players that have started this game against USC are expected to return. And when you have that much returners, I mean, that right there, I want to go grab me a ticket and get to a game, because Baylor women's basketball next year is going to be must watch TV.
Absolutely. You covered so many topics that I love, and I love that you mentioned, first and foremost, I love that you mentioned and you talk about UConn's experience, because I do think that's a huge factor. Not that USC's had a ton of experience, but they had older players. They've had players that have been in the tournament before, and then you add Juju into that mix. But I definitely think that had a huge effect on it. I think UConn has been used to getting back to the Final Four. That's just like how they've always been. They've had so many players that have been at that level. So I think that absolutely had an impact on them. And I think we've kind of seen that kind of little experience that sometimes Baylor hasn't had throughout this year in like end of game situations, or when we get a lead and we kind of give up that lead by making dumb mistakes. You could kind of see that in various games this year. But what's so great, like you said, we have returns, and they're just going to get better and better playing with each other. And really the sky's the limit for them. You think about Sarah's going to be a 5th year. She's had to really play on some very different teams. Obviously, first year was COVID year. Second year, rosters are switching up with Coach Nikki. And then finally you get kind of a full roster this year. So I expect great things from her. You had some players, Jada and Jana, kind of step up in some 1-2 position roles. And then you think about Bella and Bugs that are going to be coming back. They were only sophomores, which I don't think people understand how crazy that is as freshmen and sophomores, what they've done so far for Baylor. And there's absolutely no ceiling for them. I'm so excited to see what they can do. And then I'm just so excited to kind of see how they take this year and grow and build from that for next year.
And doing it together, right? That's a key piece there. Paige Beckers and Aaliyah Edwards have played and been to the Final Four, and they've done it together, and that's what gave them the upper hand on USC. USC, just a lot of players in there for 1 year and doing it for the first time together. And so UConn moving on. But, yeah, just so excited about the women's team. And I think, too, the end of the year AP poll, which is coming out soon. Obviously, that comes out just after the national championship. I think Baylor has made its way to give them a top 15 ranking to finish the year top 15. You make it to the Sweet 16. You have 7 top 25 wins. You did all those great things. Right before the tournament, they were kind of in that 18-19 range. A couple teams lost in front of them. Of course, they beat Virginia Tech, and a couple others, a fell victim, Duke with a nice win. Drawing a blank on who they beat there. But I'll get to it here. Duke beating Ohio State. Of course, Ohio State. They might not drop that far. But, of course, I think top 15, give it to them. And, as we go into next year, hopefully Baylor preseason top 10 would be really nice, and just keep building, especially in a new conference. Let's get to the Final Four. So the Final Four, we know it's NC State taking on South Carolina. And then you have Iowa on the other side taking on UConn. So who do you got here? Who do you see winning, cutting down the nets in Cleveland?
Oh, man. I really, okay, so I've thought this whole year just seeing them play, but South Carolina is just so good for being such a, kind of mix of young and maybe 1 or 2 old, but I just think they're solid 1 through 5. So I definitely have them cutting down the nets this year. But I think all 3 games are going to be absolutely incredible. So don't hold me to it, but, I think that they're going to pull out on top for sure.
Well, it's on tape now, Caitlin, so we are going to hold you to it. But,
no.
Yes, I'm with you on it. I'm with you. I fully agree. I think it's going to be South Carolina over Iowa. And I think Cardoza, I think she's the key. She's super athletic. I think South Carolina, just as a whole, They can throw some people on Caitlin Clark. I still think Caitlin Clark probably scores 30, 35 points, but you can beat Iowa when she scores that many. They're going to finish with more than 35 points. Okay. And so you think about Iowa, they are a team that's beatable. I mean, K-State beat them. We saw Nebraska beat them. They are beatable, and South Carolina yet to lose all season. So I'm expecting South Carolina to beat Iowa, but I do think, as you said, a really good game. I think UConn, if UConn was fully healthy, would give Iowa a big-time run for its money and probably beat them. But UConn's not fully healthy. I mean, they have 3 or 4 of their top 9, 10 players that are out. And so the fact that they even made the Final Four speaks volumes to them. They're going to be really, really good next year, as is Baylor. But, yeah, looking forward to this. And how about the TV ratings? So I sent this article over to you. We knew this was going to happen, right? 12.3 million viewers on Monday night. That was the average for the Iowa win over LSU. That's an all-time record on the women's side, and just great for the game. Once again, that's a value to the entire game, and that will lead us into the next topic of the NCAA tournament and the fact of host sites maybe no longer, and the fact that 2 spots in the regionals may go back to 4, what it used to be, and what it is on the men's side. So basically, reading the tea leaves here, the NCAA women's tournament brass, they're going to mull changes this summer. They had a clause in there that they could look at this in 2025. They're going to look at it a year early to take in and kind of assess where the game's at, where the sport's at. Obviously, we know women's basketball right now on the college side is just super. The sky's the limit on it, and it's growing, right? Buy stock now, and everybody wants to be involved in it. So, Caitlin, you've been talking about this for months now. And it seems like you might have somebody at the NCAA brass special phone number, and you've been reaching out to them. What do you make of these possible changes?
I love them because I've said it the last few weeks, the last month or so. It's just now's the time, like they're saying, and you see them moving it up a year. Like, people will travel. When I tell you I was in Portland, the amount of Iowa fans I just saw in Portland, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just those little things of people will travel for it. Right now is kind of the time of there's such big names, such big schools, so many others that maybe didn't watch basketball before are now watching it, and willing to travel for it and willing to see those star players and those star teams. Obviously, people kind of think in the past, having those home games helped with revenue and attendance. But now it's kind of, we're getting past that point. The past few years have been really, really good for women's basketball. And so I enjoy it, and I think there's been several instances too where there's just been so many mistakes at some of these kind of, I don't know, like we talk about the Gonzaga event, or we just talk about different situations that have happened in this tournament so far. And so it's almost kind of forcing the NCAA to talk about it and kind of step up.
3-point line.
Yeah, 3-point line. Like, there's just so much stuff that's, kind of been on social media this year about talking about all different things in the tournament. And so I just think that's an important step for NCAA to kind of talk about and really take it under consideration, because I think it'll be a great idea.
Yeah, I love some symmetry there, and the fact that, the men's tournament, and they're very different games. They're very different, and we don't have to go down all the paths, but I will say this. Women's basketball has a major advantage over the men right now, and one of the advantages is no one-and-done players. Okay, so you think about Juju Watkins. We made this example before. Juju Watkins, with her talent, if the NBA and the WNBA are the exact, which they're not, but if they are the exact, Juju Watkins would be gone tomorrow. Okay. Well, she would have been gone Monday night, declared right away, right? She would have been gone. But the fact that they're not, and you can keep a player in college, 3-4 years, there's that age deal after the 3 years. But if you can keep them in at least 3 years, that allows fans to gravitate towards those players. And now suddenly you have stars, almost like the NBA, and people we know follow people. And so they're watching the stars rather than just the team or the school or whatever. There's Caitlin Clark fans, but they're not really Iowa Hawkeye fans. And they'll know that when Caitlin Clark leaves and they no longer watch Iowa. But you know what I mean? That's a piece to it. The women have an advantage, and they're going to have that advantage for many years to come. So, you know, it's one of those pieces that the women's game can be just super strong. I said this last week. I know I said it to a few people, and they're like, "Really?" I watched a lot more of the women's this past weekend than the men's. Period. Okay, and it wasn't just because of Caitlin Clark. I was watching all the games. And so I was at a wedding on Saturday. I was watching our game on the phone on YouTube TV. Love that. So I couldn't see everything, but you're catching it, you're following it. And then the next day, I went back and watched it, you know, live. Well, tape back, but you know what I'm saying. But I just think there's so many great things about the women's game right now, and so to have it similar to the men's in terms of the no longer host sites and just put this thing nationally, I think there's more opportunity. The women's game has more room to grow than where it is right now, and so let's go out there and do it. Worst case scenario too, if this doesn't work out, look at it 2-3 years later and go revert back to it. But I think it's worth trying.
I definitely think it's worth trying. And you made such a good point. In the men's league, okay, you have one person come, for a year, they're a one and done. Okay. You have a bunch of people that probably come watch in that year and then, they go off to the league. But when you have players like Juju, Flau'jae Johnson, like all these other players around the country that stay 3-4, obviously COVID years will be done soon. So we'll just say 3 and 4 years. But you have those fans that turn into individual person, like player fan, to maybe, okay, now they're like really connected with the school and now they're going to be fans for, for years. Maybe they'll go watch that player play overseas or in the league, but they're still going to be connected to that school for 3 to 4 years in some way or another. And so I just think that's such a huge point that you make, because it does bring that connection factor. And the women's game has become so much more passionate, and it has been growing. And like you said, I said this a couple weeks ago, I was like, okay, if it doesn't work, then change it back. Like you said it just now. It's not like it's forever, life or death. It's one of those things like, hey, let's try it out. Now might be a great time to do it with how great these past few years have been going. And then if it doesn't work out and it fires back on us, then okay, let's go back to the old ways. Let's figure something else out.
Yeah, there's still work to do, right? I got a cousin and was talking to her about who she picked, because she said at school they picked NCAA tournaments, and say, okay, who'd you pick? Well, who'd you pick for the men? Who'd you pick for the women? Oh, we only did the men's, right? And this happens some places, okay? So there's still room to grow. And yeah, it's like, come on, really? But there's still room to grow, and it's just opportunity for this sport. And so here's something too. COVID year, yes. Next year is the final year of the COVID year. Thank goodness. I don't know about y'all out there, all the listeners, the fans, who's a senior? Are they coming back? Can they have the year? I don't know what a senior is anymore. After next year, seniors return to being seniors, okay? That is going to be great. The fact that you can look on someone's stats, their bio on ESPN.com, and actually see 4 years, and you're like, okay, they're a senior, they're done. After next year, that's over. So that is hallelujah. We want Andrews back next year. I'm great for that. But after that, let's move it along.
I personally benefited from the 5 years, but I totally understand what you're saying. So I'm kind of like, oh, well, I'm done. I'm all good. But I get what you're saying. It's been very chaotic with all that stuff.
And senior night. So if you're working in athletics, marketing, our area of creative and Baylor Vision and all that stuff, you're making senior stuff multiple years for the same person. Okay. It's just the same deal. We've had players, heck, I think Richard Cunningham for baseball, he may have walked like 3 times for senior day. We've had multiple people walk twice. I mean, that was more of a common thing, almost a new normal than not. But thank goodness that, that will be behind us, and, moving back to kind of what it used to be. And so looking forward to that. But yeah, and I think another thing too, Jeff Goodman, the Field of 68's Jeff Goodman, who really reports on college basketball on the men's side, he said that he expects nearly half of scholarship players on the men's side to hit the transfer portal. Whew, half of the players. Now, on the women's side, I don't have the exact number, but it's not going to be that high. Let's just say for this, maybe it's 25%, maybe it's 30%, which is still really high. But those are all pieces, like for a fan, You want to know who's returning on your team and see someone in 2, 3, 4 years. Once again, I just think the women's game has some built-in pieces that can really make this thing grow. So right now, if you're just about men's basketball and you're thinking about what women's basketball might have been 20 years ago and you just don't want to try it, I'm telling you right now, it's a lot of fun. And with our team and what we got coming up next year, and with our head coach, who's as good of an X's and O's coach as any coach, man or woman on either side of the ball, you want to be a part of this team. Who doesn't want to be on a good team, in a bandwagon? Oh, my good team, you know? Of course, we all do. And so that's this team next year. They got some great players returning. You think about the story of Jada Walker, Sarah Andrews, who will go for the three-point record next year to pass Odyssey Sims as the all-time three-point field goal leader. And you think about Bella and Bugs and those two and just what great people they are, only as sophomores, be juniors next year. And then you think about the new class. Well, I'm sure we'll have some other pieces return and then maybe some, one or two transfers or whatnot, how that shakes out. It's just going to be a lot of fun. And obviously part of that is the offseason. And that's on us right now. So the coaching staff's kind of figuring out the roster construction and management. But we think about a player like Jada Walker. Perfect example. She had her best couple games there at the end of the season. Offseason, what does that look like, Caitlin, for a player coming back to the team? And how critical, in your opinion, is the offseason for success next year for this team?
Oh, it's huge. It really is big, and I can say that personally because me from my freshman to sophomore year, my body changed so dramatically. Just my skill wise changed so dramatically, and especially I can tell you firsthand as well. Like Nikki and them are so good at summer workouts, at individual workouts, and at growing. And I think it's really just like all those players need to take that opportunity. Like I understand, okay, off season, the schedule is definitely more chill. You're just in summer classes, campus isn't packed. You're not going 3, 4 hours a day, games a week, but you still need to take it very, very seriously because that is such a huge impact, whether it's your skill level, comfortability, better shooting, like playing better as a team together. Obviously, you're going to get new players, different lineups with people leaving, people staying, like getting that experience with each other in the off season, and just like taking it seriously. I think so many people kind of like maybe don't really want to put in the work in the off season, but it's such a big impact on how you play individually, whether it has to do with skills, confidence, on the court, off the court. So it's going to be so huge for this team because you are going to be missing some very key pieces that were upperclassmen for us this past season, but you're also keeping so many pieces that can be so great in the system for next year. So I'm really excited to kind of see how they do throughout this offseason, how they come out next year.
I've almost looked at it before, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I almost feel like, so we were in a class together, right? So we can say this example. Man, Caitlin, you're around a while. You had a class with me, and I was super old to be in those classes too, like 33 years old. But any event, so you almost feel like the game in the season is like the exam, like the test, right? You've worked all season to do that. Of course, you got scouting and film and some stuff like that and things you're working on for that set game. But I feel like the off season is where you study. It's where you prep. It's where you take your notes. It's where you learn. That is all the area. And then as you go into the season, not that you're on autopilot or a robot, but you're just doing it, right? You're just taking the test. That's how I really feel about the offseason. And that tells you that the offseason is super important.
No, and that's such a great kind of analyzation of it because it is true. When you come in, and I can say this now, there were some people that I played with that had a really hard time grasping that IQ part of basketball when coming in. With Nikki and them, like they use such a high level of IQ of reading the game, of their kind of lingo and the way they talk about the game. It's incredible. And if you love that stuff and if you're good at that stuff, you're good to go. Like you're hopping on the bike and you're just going. But for some people, it's almost like you kind of need to put training wheels on their bike and get them to really understand it. And that's such a huge part of off season because if you don't get all of that knowledge down and they do drills that they're going to do in season during those summer workouts. They use their lingo. They do different concepts that is used within their plays and their system throughout the summer. They're just breaking it down. And so if you don't take advantage of that time and really learn those things, you're automatically behind the entire season. And it may not be skill wise, but you're automatically going to be behind in the IQ part of basketball, which is so, so important in kind of their system and the way they read things and the way they play basketball at Baylor.
If I was a player, which I'm not, if I was a player in the women's basketball team thinking about this, or, really anybody, not just Baylor, but I would be, but especially with Coach Nikki, I'd be like, teach me, right? I want to be living in that office. If I was a player, you're going to have to kick me out, right? Because I just want to learn. I want to learn why we do what we do, late game situations. Why are we doing this? When do you call timeouts? When do you advance the ball? Why do you do that? When should I foul? All these little things, and just build them in my mind, and then take that and push that off to my teammates. If they're not in there with me, I'm being the leader. And I just really think that, hey, these off seasons, it's really about how bad do you want it? Just like when you're working, right? Everybody's worked with people who are not good workers, okay, period. We've worked with people who are average. Just do what's asked. And then when you have those overachievers that have high initiatives that go above and beyond, some people don't like those people, but those are the leaders, okay? And those are the people who advance. And those are the people who help cut down nets, okay? Those are the people that raise the trophy first. Those are the people that we want to have on our team. And I know we have some of those people, but it's the offseason where all that gets started up, and somebody's got to unite the group. And so just really excited about, having that opportunity. You think about this team too, they have GAs, they have managers. So you can go in there, you can practice as much as you want, probably whenever you want. And that is key, right? Get the shots up, do scrimmages, learn your new teammates, all those pieces. And then, mind you, you can do all this inside a brand new facility, the newest facility in the Power 5. And when you say newest and you know how much it costs, it's automatically going to be one of the best, okay? And I'll just say this much. We've worked a lot with the graphics package and different things with the Foster Development Center. So I know this place inside and out, between the weight rooms, the locker rooms, the player lounges, the offices, the court, and how much bigger it is than the current practice court, and some of the amenities that are involved in this whole space. Like, if I'm someone out there thinking about, Baylor, like this is a great spot. And so I would be grateful to be on this team. I just think the sky's the limit. All these players returning. I want next season to start right now. I know our team needs the offseason to continue to get better, but I'm ready for 24-25. You feel it?
I know. Because I'm like so mad that I don't have anything. Like, obviously I'll have the rest of this basketball season to watch. I'll have WNBA to watch this summer, but I just loved watching them this year. I think once they kind of, obviously started out in the season, they started off so strong with so much energy. We hit some obstacles along the way, but then, really came out with some energy. And I know, obviously, they only made it to the Sweet 16, but that's such a big step for them. It's not like I know Sarah was going through injuries this year. People were in and out. People were dealing with different things, but I think they just did such a good job at keeping that passion and playing together and doing it as an us. Not me, not she. It was very much a together type of year for them, and I want them to continue that for next season.
Well, I've enjoyed doing these with you. Super grateful that you said yes to this. I think hopefully you've had a lot of fun. We've heard some great feedback on this side in Waco. And just for the listeners out there, Caitlin really committed, okay? She was in Greece for a long time doing these podcasts, whether it's like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., midnight. I mean, did whatever it took. And so just grateful for you. And just hope you enjoyed this and had some fun.
Absolutely. I was glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, that'll do it for today's edition of Inside Baylor Sports, a Sport and Story production. Thanks for listening. For Caitlin Bickle, I'm Justin Hoff. Have a great Wednesday, and Sick 'em Bears.